Come on, guys. They didn't need to make this movie. We already know what the real Zootopia 2 is.
We can tell that these are bad guys because we see them seek hiling
Seriously,
over Ram's
new
skull
cartoon
flags.
crush unlocked!
Way to work that diaper, big guy.
I find Zootopia, at least the first movie, very bland, and that, in conjunction with how much Disney likes to market it, makes it register to me as just another part of their brand portfolio, and not an actual movie. I see the two main characters, and all I see are plush toys, sippy cups, and fridge magnets. Oh, and Funko Pops. If Funko goes out of business, will that line date the video? Come back in 5 years and find out. I'm not saying a movie having merchandise or tie-ins is bad on its own. I'm also not completely dismissive of movies just because they're from big bad corporate Disney. I liked Encanto. I like Turning Red. That's Pixar. It's different, but it's not like most of the general public who are buying their kids Zootopia toys for Christmas know or care about that distinction. The Disney execs probably don't care either. And now with the sequel out, have my thoughts on the Zootopia franchise changed? No, Zootopia 2 made me completely turn this script around. For whatever reason, I have such a seething, boiling dislike for the first Zootopia, like flames on the side of my face. I cannot stand that movie. The second one was just a fun watch. It wasn't perfect, but it really showed that this world and characters can be fun on screen. So today, let's go over the incredible glow-up transformation of the Zootopia franchise, at least in my opinion. We'll be going over my feelings on the first, as well as the spin-offs, and then the second, and what I think they improved over the first on. Zootopia, or Zootropolis, depending on where you are in the world, is about Judy Hopps, a rabbit from the country who dreams of being a police officer in the big city of Zootopia. This is a world of anthro-animals, where predators and prey evolved past eating each other and formed what, in theory, is an egalitarian society, where all the animals live in harmony. But when Judy makes it to said city, she finds that things aren't as equal as she was told. She faces prejudice from the bigger animals, but she's a hashtag girl boss who can do anything she sets her mind to. Judy takes up a case that turns into a buddy cop adventure when she teams up with a criminal fox named Nick Wilde. Nick serves as Judy's guide to Zootopia's criminal underground. The straight-laced bunny and sly fox don't get along at first, but over the course of the adventure develop a bit of a friendship. The mystery unravels into this government conspiracy involving the mayor's secretary and her goons who kingsman random predators into going savage and attacking people. She, Bellwether, has got the same hang-ups as Judy, always being pushed around by the big guys, and decides enough is enough. Nick and Judy bring her to justice, of course. Nick becomes a cop, racism is solved, and they all get together to dance to Shakira. I don't hate the first Zootopia. It's a very mid film, but because it has that golden Disney seal and, you know, furries, people seem to elevate it a lot over what it really is. A lot of care clearly went into the design of the world and movement of the characters, but the characters' personalities, the story, dialogue, sense of humor, don't have anything striking about them. Aside from the way they tried to talk about real-world issues, I think, for maybe a good 5 minutes, and depending on how you look at that, it doesn't stand out for the best reasons. The main two characters' designs are my least favorite part of Zootopia. Visually, to get that out of the way, I just see that interchangeable 2010s Disney protagonist look that ended up being the basis for this age of modern AI Pixar-style sludge. If the most apt comparison to a movie from around the same time is The Nut Job, you know you messed up. In spite of that, the character animation does a great job at conveying a lot of what personality there is on screen. Body language and in general character acting aren't really things you see people comment on with 3D movies, at least not the 3D Disneys, so I figured I'd point that out. But all those things could have been pushed further. You really have to go out of your way to notice those little bits. I guess my favorite sequence in the movie, if I had to pick one, is the part where the theme song is playing and Judy's on the train. We get all these sweeping shots of these fun, whimsical places, and I wish we saw more of them instead of oh-so-imaginative locations like a parking lot, the DMV, some courtyard at a sort of Buddhist temple-looking place, a building next to a waterfall, generic city street scaled up, generic city street scaled down. They tease you with a lot of creative places, but the most exotic we ever see is the Rainforest District, and even then, it's only a single set with not a lot going on. Parts of the movie are flashy enough to make you think it's super duper imaginative, but in general, the really strong visual moments are fewer and more far between than that train sequence would have you believe. It's important to get into the elephant in the room. Zootopia 1 was almost entirely rewritten halfway through production. Originally, it was a lot darker, Nick was the protagonist, and the predator-prey relations plot would have been front and center, and taken on a more dystopian angle. Preds would have to wear these shock collars that go off whenever they get too excited. Nick, in an attempt to make money, and show the fair people of Zootopia what they're missing, would have built this little amusement park where they could all run free. Collarless, of course. The subplot with the Preds going feral still would have been there, but it would have been blamed on Nick and his operation. Instead of Bellwether, this pig would have been the bad guy. There also would have been a medical fraud subplot, if that's what you'd call it, where Nick sets up a clinic as a loophole to take the collars off. While no doubt the released movie brings up some heavy topics, the first drafts were a lot more severe, and probably had the higher-ups worried about it not selling enough Happy Meals. I mean, it's up to Disney what they want to do with their brands, but the fact that the movie got so far in development with those ideas that they were even animating test shots using the final character models gives me the impression that they wanted to make something more challenging, but the execs got cold feet and made them undo all their work. I'll also acknowledge that the directors themselves have given their reasons for the rewrite.
We were presenting a world that was very dystopian right from the top, and it didn't feel like a place where we wanted to be. It got to the point where it was very hard to root for the city, and we don't want to create worlds that we don't like, that we want our characters not to live in. It's not what we do as a studio.
It's not hard to look at the final movie and see how it was changed. They gutted most of the darker elements and filled in whatever holes there were with relatable Facebook mom humor, and this very broad, surface-level, believe-in-yourself message. The humor didn't really get me. The single gag I liked was when Judy puts a car boot on the baby stroller. The bit with the Yogi, Yak, and the elephant who doesn't remember anything I thought was clever, but there's not much else to like. Overdone pop culture references. Isn't it funny that this character looks a certain way but acts differently, gags, characters who are supposed to be professional acting goofy and non-threatening, safe edgy fake blood jokes ripped off their company's own movie from almost 20 years ago. Yeah, keep A Bug's Life in the back of your head for the rest of the video. Some of the rejected animatics have jokes that come a lot more naturally, instead of the final version where a lot of the humor feels engineered. The overall plot thread, Judy's quest to prove herself as a bunny cop, is conveyed through mostly telling and not showing. Remember, big thing in writing is show, don't tell. They really could have communicated her struggle in a more interesting way than having every character spout off these lines about how they and the world don't believe in her. It starts out very shallow, and it makes me not really empathize with Judy as a character. Nothing wrong with a good underdog story, but because that's the only thing the audience knows about her, I didn't get much of her personality, and that affects the way she plays off Nick, who I found very generic. Their dynamic is supposed to be the heart of the movie, but a lot of the time, their banter doesn't have the impact I think they wanted it to. And not only is it a kind of duo I've seen before, but this movie's lack of subtlety extends to a lot of their interactions. The first few times they interact, even he starts going off on her about daring to girl boss too close to the sun. And it's all very forced. It's like it was written with purely toddlers in mind, the way they have to keep reminding the audience in the simplest terms what's going on. But it's clearly not aimed solely at that demographic, in part because of some relatively intense scenes I could see a 3 or 4-year-old getting pretty freaked out by. So you can't even make the excuse that it's not subtle because it's for kids. Kids movies can have simple stories even. I think that's what gives a lot of the older Disney cartoons their appeal. But you can still have a simple story without this sort of eye-roll inducing obvious exposition. Going back to the deleted scenes, they convey a lot more of the story in small but effective ways. This scene where the polar bear cub puts on the collar and feels the shock for the first time, paired with Judy's reaction seeing how Preds have to live with the collars and looking back at Nick with his on, it's got so much weight to it, and it's just shown to us through the character's actions. I wouldn't be surprised if they were short on time after the rewrite, and that's why the final movie's story is told in this plain way. From what I know about how Frozen 2 was made, they were changing things around on that even super duper late into production. They might have only had the time to get down the story beats in the simplest way they could. We can never know what the early Zootopia draft would have been like as a full finished feature. The movie has a lot of issues that seem to not be present in the deleted scenes that exist, but who's to say that that version wouldn't have had its own problems? Maybe it would have been too dark for a Disney movie, and I'd be sitting here, actually I'm standing while I'm recording this, complaining about how they should have reworked it.
Yes? Don't act like you don't see me.
Alright, actually, there's two elephants in the room. The whole Zootopia racism thing. I won't attempt to debunk the claims that this movie is propaganda, or how they're, in a very much unintentional way, casting minorities as, quote, predators, and white people as, quote, prey some of the time. Again, not intentional. It makes a lot of thematic sense to look at it more as a movie about the concept of prejudice in general. You know, judging somebody based on how they appear, rather than systemic racism as it exists in certain parts of the world. That being said, they sort of want to have their cake and eat it too, putting in these scenes that parallel uncomfortable real-world situations.
Bunny can call another bunny cute, but when other animals do it...
You're supposed to understand that the movie's about racism in a way, but don't think too hard about it because it's also about Judy Hopps and funny Sloth and funny Shakira. Aside from all the press this movie got at the time for its apparent message about social issues, Zootopia doesn't stand out that much. Just another non-musical, funny-talking animal movie for kids in a sea of 2010's non-musical, funny-talking animal movies for kids. Another tile in the mosaic of DreamWorks face examples. There's some artistry and definitely some fun to be had with it, but personally, I just couldn't stand it. I felt like Grandpa Lou watching The Land Without Smiles.
Land without brains is more like it.
It's so plain and shallow. I would not go out of my way to watch it again. If you want to show kids a movie that deals with themes of oppression, I would recommend A Bug's Life. Hey, still keep thinking about A Bug's Life, because we're not done. Between Zootopia 1 and 2, there were these shorts they put out on Disney+. Don't have much to say about these. If you missed all the silly little gag characters, these are for you. They're clearly shitbaiting the wildebeest chief and the cheetah character in theirs, and a Real Housewives parody. In 2022, was the complete lack of lighting in this one meant to match the lighting of the type of show they're parodying? Or am I gonna have to pull out the James Rolfe clip? I think pretty much all of these also Lion King 1.5 themselves into the original movie somehow. I wasn't really dying to see any of these characters again. They don't even have Bellwether. I mean, come on, people. To hype up the release of Zootopia 2 in China, they put out these new shorts on Bilibili, a Chinese video platform very similar to YouTube. None of these have dialogue, and they're all stylized in really fun ways. Half are stop motion, and the 2D ones have really fantastic animation. I wish we got stuff like this here in the West, but I imagine companies assume Americans don't know what an art style is. And they're probably right. But if you'll allow me to take more of an aside, let's talk about the Zootopia theme park rides! One of the more interesting examples of supplemental media are the two Zootopia attractions that exist thus far at the Disney parks worldwide. Zootopia Hot Pursuit at Shanghai Disneyland, and the new for 2025, made to tie into Zootopia 2, Better Zoogether at Animal Kingdom in Walt Disney World. Theme park rides based on movies are always fun to look at, within the context of canon. It's not like the stories of the attractions themselves are that outrageous or add any big revelations to the source material, but it's a real curiosity because what you're doing with an attraction is adapting the world and characters into a very specific medium, putting guests into the world of the property. In the case of Shanghai Disney, there's an entire Zootopia land built around the ride. I've never been to Shanghai Disneyland, but from watching vlogs, this place looks so in-depth and detailed. There's probably more fun things to see here than there is in the actual location this is based on in the movie. Hot Pursuit is the one I'd prefer to ride if given the chance. The story here takes place after the first movie. Bellwether breaks out of prison and kidnaps the Shakira Gazelle character, I assume before a big concert. So now Nick and Judy have to stop Bellwether and find Gazelle. I'd love to visit the East Asian Disney parks one day. They can go absolutely crazy with the details and have these animatronics in the queue area, which add a lot to the overall experience. Dare I say, It's got that Disney magic. On the other hand, the United States Disney parks look to me, from a distance, like they're working around tight budget constraints when designing rides, and Better Zoogether is no exception. This is more of a sit-down 4D show with a few IRL animatronics and some other stage effects. The stage here is inside that big tree at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida. You might also know it as the park with Avatar Land, residing in the former home of It's Tough to Be a Bug, based on, you guessed it, A Bug's Life! This attraction opened with the park in 1998 and was infamous for how intense it was. At parts of it, the room would go dark, fog would cover everything, rubber spiders would drop down from the ceiling, they'd blow air from holes in the back of the seat, I kid you not, to make you feel like hornets were stinging you. And it would like hurt too. This was at Disney. Seeing all the people carrying their crying children out of the theater might as well have been an imagineered part of the show. Other than that, it was this kind of goofy show where the bugs would all come out and do little tricks that would incorporate the 4D effects. The big highlight was this really complex animatronic of the villain Hopper, not voiced by Kevin Spacey in this, thankfully. For 1998, the movement on him was super impressive. The show would open and close with this charming little flick animatronic too, that would come upside down from the ceiling. It was a really well-designed attraction, but in the 25 plus years this thing was around, I imagine Disney got so many complaints about it, just waiting for an opportunity to gut it and put in something more brand friendly. And this year, they did. Zootopia, Better Zoogether, features all the oh-so-lovable characters from the first and second movies, as they host a party for the titular holiday, Zoogether Day. Again, I'm a Zootopia hater. I will admit, I'm biased against this specific IP. Even with that, this is such an obvious downgrade. I assume because the Tree of Life was built alongside the park with all these bespoke effects, they couldn't put in new ones with the time they had, so it looks like there's very little going on, aside from the film being shown on screen. Nothing drops from the ceiling, the animatronics here are super underwhelming compared to the original. The cheetah, Clawhauser, is just a clone of the one at Shanghai. They couldn't even be asked to design a new animatronic. Look at that fluid full-body Hopper animatronic compared to this recycled torso-up character that already looks like it's falling apart. Instead of Flick, you get Bellwether's butt. I thought you said this was a downgrade. It doesn't even really make sense from a technical standpoint. In the original, the idea was that you were shrunk down to the size of a bug and seeing an actual show with the characters in universe there in front of you. But in the redone version, you're supposed to be in a live studio audience for a TV program, and they're showing footage of all these places in universe on a screen, but within the footage there are these cinematic camera angles and cuts. What kind of TV crew would be able to get this kind of footage? What's the reason for all these effects if in universe you're meant to be watching it on a screen? And you have Nick and Judy looking at the Clawhauser animatronic. Despite them technically not being in the same location, they don't say what they're looking at. Like, how can they see him? If you want to watch a guy lose his mind over this, and also go into specific detail about the ride, check out the Walt Disney World Today review of this. A lot of my info about the actual attraction experience comes from his video. He gets a lot into how it doesn't work as a part of the Animal Kingdom park as a whole, and while I see that, I was more bummed to see how much of a technical downgrade it was. 4D shows, animatronic shows, live stage shows, those kinds of attractions are always some of my favorites. I would go to bat for the Enchanted Tiki Room any day of the week. From a greasy nerd perspective, it sucks that Disney World keeps axing this type of attraction, or in the case of Zootopia, replacing it while not adding anything exciting or innovative. When a Disney IP gets a theme park ride, that's a sign it's not going away. The Zootopia attractions are a fun curiosity worth mentioning, even if I'm not a fan of the movie. Thanks for humoring me while I yap about this nonsense for a few minutes. Anyways, Zootopia 2! I sat down for Zootopia 2 expecting not to like it. I mean, I'm not a fan of the first, and the last two movies Disney put in theaters were Moana 2 and Wish. Both not so well received. Could you blame me? But I walked out thinking Zootopia 2 was a massive improvement. Visually, it's a lot more interesting, the humor works so much better than the first, and I thought the direction they took Nick and Judy's relationship was cute. It's not perfect, obviously, and it does have a few annoying contemporary Disney tropes, but I think it makes up for how underwhelming the first was. I'll be getting into spoilers later on, but I'll give a warning. For now, here's a basic summary. Judy and Nick have been working together for a while. After an accident, they get barred from taking on any new cases. Judy just can't stop herself, however, and starts investigating a mysterious reptile sighting in Zootopia. And reptiles haven't been seen in Zootopia for years! Oh no! This turns into them having to go on a new adventure with some new characters trying to find a secret that will set the record straight about why there aren't any reptiles in Zootopia. Along the way, Nick and Judy argue, get separated, and then make up. I think a big thing people want to know about this movie is whether they're dating, married. It's all subtext. Very intentionally obvious subtext. The way they treat being police officers like they're a couple and having to go to couples therapy is played for laughs mostly, but ends in the scene where they go into the roots of their issues in a very post-couples therapy kind of way. It's a very charming decision. In fact, the movie as a whole charmed me a whole lot. In the 9 years it took to get this made, they injected a lot of soul into it. I just brought it up, obviously, the relationship between Nick and Judy, whether they should separate as partners or still work together, their clashing personalities. It came off as really cute and endearing. Having this goofy layer of buddy cop coating over the relationship drama reminds me of that one episode of SpongeBob, where SpongeBob and Sandy can't stop doing karate, which of course is a metaphor for
peanut.
they portray the duo's issues with each other in a very real way. If anything, I think it would be weird to have them outright in a relationship for some of the stuff they talk about. The new dynamic resulted in a lot of character moments that felt fresh. They found an interesting way to have a new spin on both a buddy cop movie and a relationship drama by combining the two. It's smart. Adults want something with a little depth or drama to it, but kids don't want yucky kissing and would instead have a funny action adventure. So they met in the middle. It captures a really broad appeal in a better way than even some of the more historically acclaimed Disney movies, I would argue. And yeah, if this sucked, I would be all over it for pandering to everyone instead of having a vision, but this movie has some vision. It has soul. Whereas the original, they had to rework some other script, here they knew what movie they were making from the start, and it shows. They completely overhauled the style of humor in this. It's a lot more snappy, small bits really stand out, little interjections of dialogue from one-off background characters, or creative visual gags. There are so many jokes about how it sucks to be a rodent or other small animal living in this world. When something funny would happen in the first movie, it was always very drawn out. The movie would stop dead in its tracks to make way for a joke. It was like they were looking at you going, huh? Huh? Here they mixed in some faster paced, Lego movie or Madagascar type energy to great effect. This and the Naked Gun remake were some of the only movies that had me laughing in the theater. I think it'll go down as one of the funnier Disney movies, sort of like The Emperor's New Groove. Oh, speaking of The Emperor's New Groove, guess who's back? Patrick Warburton as the new mayor, who is a stallion. Ha. I like that they don't bring attention to that in the movie. They respect the audience's intelligence. Wow, another point for Zootopia 2. The way they animated the horse probably made a lot of people happy. Same with Gazelle. They improved on the look a whole lot. There's great deliberate use of color in a lot of shots, lighting, set design, etc. I noticed it mostly during the climax. It's not hyper stylized like some of the recent stuff from Sony or DreamWorks, but they probably took cues from it just for how they thought about color. It's directed a whole lot better too. The layouts can be a lot of fun and they communicate story beats in a more visual way. A carryover problem from the first, some of the sets feel like they are plopping animals into normal real-life settings and not giving them any quirky Zootopia spin, but between the small gags peppered throughout, expressive lighting, and the super creative scene in that swamp environment, I'm able to forgive it. They go inside those big walls that we see in the first. It's this dark industrial setting that really pops with the help of the cinematography, if you can even call it that. I noticed they even redesigned some of the character models. Judy has these slightly bigger cheeks. It undoes a lot of that Paw Patrol, Cocomelon look of the first. The Chief, for some reason, I noticed is a lot more expressive too. They either gave him bigger eyes or redid his model to get better facial animation. You still have to remember that the first one came out years ago. It's slight, but technology has improved since then, and I think that was a part of what made this movie so good looking. So, heads up, as we get into the things that still suck or weren't improved bullet point on my Google Doc, we do have to get into spoilers as well, so just skip to this timestamp if you're not here for that. there's a twist villain. This movie contains the oh-so-hated Disney twist villain trope. There's a villain and a twist villain who sort of work together at the end. So the actual villains in the movie are these rich family of lynxes who want to cover up how their great-grandfather stole the design for the weather walls. The real designer is this snake who's the great-grandmother of the Ke Huy Quan snake, who you no doubt have seen all over the marketing. Gary, the snake, wants to help his family and revitalize the old reptile district of the city. The main characters obviously want to help him, so the objective here is finding the old reptile neighborhood and the original patent that the old snake lady had. They're helped by, get this, a member of the Lynx family who wants to rebel against his disapproving father. During the third act, he double-crosses Judy so that he can destroy the patent and win the approval of his family. It was an effective twist. I did not see it coming. But did they really need it? The old Lynx guy would have been fine as the villain. As the audience, you hate this dude a lot more. He sends the cops after Nick and Judy after framing them. They imply that he pulled strings to get the new mayor into office and has him in his pocket too. Yeah, there's a political corruption plot and an actual semi-on-screen murder in a flashback. It's darker than the first. The plot about them paving over the reptile neighborhood had me like, wow, they went there? That kind of thing happens and has happened in real life, and in a very similar way to how it is here. Again, more good noodle stars for Zootopia 2 for being daring, but they undermine that by shoving in this cliche twist. And with Paubert being a bad guy, the movie creates two new problems. One, the incompetent Patrick Warburton mayor is still mayor, and even though he has his own little arc, I think they could have ended it with him stepping down and Paubert taking over. In the case they kept him as a good guy. It just rubs me the wrong way that he's still in charge at the end, when every other scene he's in is highlighting how bad he is at his job. And two, if all the lynxes are evil, does that mean that certain types of animals are predisposed to antisocial behavior? You know what the prey animals thought when they were being racist towards the predators? I would leave it at that. If there weren't all these lines about lynxes being territorial animals that they repeat throughout the movie, there's not a single good lynx in this movie. Did nobody realize that when they were working on it in the 9 years since the first? They accidentally undid the message of the original. If you read it a certain way. And there are other questions I don't think were answered in the movie. Where were the snakes all living before they came back at the end? Why are there suddenly all these unique characters on the police squad, including these pigs who were cut characters from the first? Why does the evil rich guy keep taunting the main characters to their faces, who could do that thing with the carrot pen and blast it everywhere? I don't care if he's being overly confident or whatever. If he's smart enough to have the entire government working for him, he should be smart enough to not let these people who could at least testify against him in court or something know about his evil plans. The movie is partially just a vehicle for Ke Huy Quan as a voice actor. He has a great range as Gary. It just felt a little obvious to me that they were trying to showcase him. And I won't lie, it did take me out after a certain point. Let me also say, the marketing with him being the new, goofy, annoying sidekick to Nick and Judy is super misleading. Nick doesn't even meet Gary until the climax, if I remember correctly, and he's actually one of the more serious characters in the movie. He has this whole little emotional story arc, which is better than I can say about the beaver. This is a spiritually Awkwafina character. Not played by Awkwafina, obviously, but it's that same let me take over the scene with my random asides type performance. The beaver character worked as a part of the cast, but I found her very annoying in that specific Disney comic relief way. That scene with her breaking Nick out of prison was sort of endearing, but otherwise, I think they could have toned her down. I went into Zootopia 2 with zero expectations, and as a result, I enjoyed it a lot. It had charm, more style than the first, and some good jokes. A lot of parts I disliked in the first are dropped or diminished. The annoying side characters from the first have very small roles, or in the case of Clawhauser, genuinely get some fun bits. The try-everything nonsense is seen as just a part of Judy's character this time around. The new Shakira song doesn't have that phony inspirational energy to the lyrics either. I thought that was an improvement. It's a fun watch. Nothing spectacular. The exact kind of movie that deserves a dance party ending. As a treat. With 2 making as much money as it is, you know we're in for more sequels. They even tease Zootopia 3 at the end of this. I'm curious to see where they go with it, but I'll wait till it's out on Disney+. Zootopia 2 showed that this idea, this world, these characters could work for a Disney movie, but 9 years after the first time they tried. Zootopia 1 is fine for a kids movie, but I don't think it has as much substance as people like to claim. The spin-off material released between the 2 movies doesn't have much either, and really serves to push Zootopia as a brand. And with that said, the second movie subverted my expectations. It got me to see these Disney corporate mascots as characters. The animation industry might not be in the best place right now, but this movie gave me strong hope that they still let the Disney people make good movies. Maybe Wish is good. I haven't seen Wish. Everybody leave an angry comment about how I didn't understand the first Zootopia if you want me to review Wish.